Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Rabe Creations podcast. My name is Nicole, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, here in Canada, where I live with my husband Barry, my son Riley, and my beautiful Rottweiler named Grace. So this podcast primarily deals with crochet. There is also sewing involved, and every podcast does come equipped with a book recommendation. So if that sounds like something that you would like, please stick around. To all my returning viewers, hello, it's so good to see you again. It's nice to spend a little time with you. And if you're brand new, welcome. I hope you enjoy what you see here. If you do, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and share the podcast with others. So, the past 2 weeks, I know I said on the last podcast that I had been a little stressed out, and that really hasn't changed much. It is just a stressful time of year right now. At work, things are changing around a little bit. We've been assigned new departments, so there's new things to learn. Just new challenges there. On a personal front, we did lose my aunt last week. She had been sick for quite some time. She had dementia, was living in hospice care, and she also had cancer, and that is ultimately what did take her life. I'd like to take a few moments to reflect on the fact that although dementia, Alzheimer's, all of those aging issues that a lot of our friends and family and relatives tend to go through, as horrible as it was, as terrible as it was to see her in mental anguish, losing contact with reality, no longer recognizing family when they went to go visit, as hard as that was, it was a blessing as well, because she also forgot about the cancer. So she fought very, very hard right up till the end. She was a fighter. So I'd like to dedicate this episode to my Auntie Ruth. I know that she is in a better place, where she is pain-free and no longer is dealing with the anguish that is dementia. So this one's for you, Auntie Ruth. Whew, a little bit of a heavy topic to start with, but it has affected my ability to get through a lot of crafting. Between the changes at work, my scheduling is changed around, so this episode is coming to you later in the week. I'm recording later in the week and earlier in the day than I normally do. I'm no longer getting my 2 days off together, so I'm having to readjust the way that I record and then edit the podcast. If you've been with me before, you'll know that my son Riley is chief in charge of editing, but he also works full-time. In fact, it's more than full-time hours. He works for a crew that works outside. So in the summertime, they can work up to, 14, 16, 18 hours a day. So he doesn't get a lot of time off. Usually they work 6 or 7 days a week. He does have the winters off. But when they are working, they're working hard. So hopefully when I'm at work tonight, he'll be at home and he can get things edited, and then I'll be able to upload tomorrow. So trying to work out all the bugs and all the kinks. Let me see here. I guess we can get into what I'm wearing. So this is a Mandella sweater vest, and I did make it about a year ago. My niece got married last summer, and I built my outfit for the day around the Mandella vest. I did investigate a few different patterns, and this one ended up being a YouTube tutorial by Yolanda, Soto, Lopez. I hope I've said that correctly, of the All Crafts channel on YouTube. It is easy enough to follow along YouTube tutorial, and I'm really pleased with the final outcome. It was created using a, I believe, 2 Karen cakes. It could have been 2 and a little bit. I can't remember for the life of me what the colorway was. I don't believe you can get it anymore. So it's, you know how Karen Cakes does that? They have certain colors and then they retire them and bring out new colors. So I'm pretty sure this is one of the colorways that got retired in the last update of colors. But I love it. It's beiges and tans and a beautiful, beautiful peachy orange color. So I figure I'll stand up and try and show you the back a little bit. A little bit difficult with the stationary camera, but I'll do my best. Since the Mandella patterning is most evident and most beautiful on the back, so let me show you. So I'm going to scooch down a little bit. Hopefully you can see the Mandella. Yeah, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. It is, as you can see, very open in mesh, and it allows for summer wear without overheating, even though it is an acrylic wool content. So overall, I've gotten quite a bit of wear out of it, and I'm very pleased with the final product. I did attempt to make another Mandella vest in, again, Karen Cakes. I like how the color changes just happen. And it was in the blue colors, different tutorial, and it ended up absolutely enormous. I do occasionally have issues with gauge, and that was a gauging issue. I'm about 5'2". I think in order to have worn that Mandella sweater vest, you would have had to be at least 6'5". It was enormous. I did end up having to frog it. It went into the timeout corner for a while, and I did end up having to frog it and reuse the yarn in a different project. So this is my one and only Mandella sweater vest, but I probably will be making a few more. It is very much my style. Alrighty, so moving along, we should probably get right into part 2, which is finished projects. All right, so moving into some finished projects for the past 2 weeks. I have some crochet and I have a little bit of sewing to share with you today. So I'm going to start out with my spa mitts. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you will already have seen these. They're also on Facebook and in my Etsy shop. I do have an ongoing consignment contract with a local business where I do sell these spa mitts through them as well. They are my own design, but they're not complicated. So here is what they look like. They're just made out of 100% cotton, and they're actually a gently exfoliating spa mitt. So growing up, my mom is European. I was actually born overseas in Germany. We had a few household objects that we used regularly that were normal to us that my friends sort of raised their eyebrows at. And one of those things were the face cloths that we used, especially in the bath, were mitts. They weren't just large squares of fabric, they were actually a mitt. So in a ode to my past, I have created those as well. So they actually do fit right on your hand. They're fantastic for children as well. And being cotton, the more you wash them, the more you use them, the softer they do get. They are constructed in the amigurumi method, so it's just around and around and around and around in a half double crochet using 100% cotton. Yeah, they're fantastic. They wash and wear like a wonderfully. Yeah, they last forever and ever and ever. I have a couple of the different colors that I've done. So right now on Etsy, I have them available as sets. So each color comes with a white cloth as well. So white, nice standard white. I do have it in a lilac-y purple, in gray, in like a brick red color. I do them in all different colors. I've got them in stripes. Yeah, this is sort of one of my bread and butter pieces. They're also really nice to work on when you don't want to think about anything else. They're totally uncomplicated. They're just around and around and around and around. So yeah, when you're not feeling up to the challenge of counting stitches or doing pattern repeats, they're nice. They're nice. They're extremely mindless. Good stress crochet. This is one of my favorites. So I've done up a bunch of those, and like I said, I've got some unlisted right now on Etsy. I also did some more sewing, some more project bags. I am really loving doing these project bags. Right now, I am in the process of doing a jumbo-sized drawstring bag. Right now, all of them are sort of a medium-sized is what I'm calling them. The jumbo bags will definitely be sweater or blanket project sized bags. They're huge. I am in the process of sort of making up the pattern and doing the first one now. Probably have at least one or two of those to show you for the next podcast. But these are the ones that I have completed over this past 2-week period. So first off, we have this one here. So very nice, subtle yellow as a background on this beautiful bumblebee fabric. If you've watched my podcast for a while, you'll recognize this fabric, as I did create a blouse for myself using this fabric as well. The base of the bag, and it is a box bottom bag as always, is in this black and white flowery type print. The casing and the handle are both done in just a white fabric, and they are stitched using black thread as a little bit of contrast. The inside of the bag is in this yellow with subtle white polka dots on it, and again stitched with the black thread to give it that contrast. Now these are interfaced, so they will stand up on their own, which is nice. So they make a great portable yarn bowl. And as I said, they are a drawstring. So you can draw it up, seal it off. Now, one of the things I've done with my drawstring bags is I've made sure to leave a little bit of gap on either side. That is not a mistake. I have done that on purpose so that if you put your yarn inside the bag and then you want to work on it, you can actually cinch it up, run the yarn out the sides, and the ball of yarn won't flop out on you if you are on the go, so to speak. So that is the first of the 2 bags for this week. So the second bag I am calling the Contrasting Stripes bag. Again, same basic construction. So it is a drawstring bag. It has this striped gray, red, and white stripes pattern on the top. The same black flowered base, and it is again the box bottom bag. The casing and the strap are both done in this red graphic polka dot type fabric. And why it's called Contrasting Stripes is that the lining fabric is also a gray, red, and white stripe. It's a slightly different pattern, but exactly the same colors as the top of the bag on the outside. So it creates this really nice contrasting look. So again, really, really pleased with how this one turned out. And the drawstring with the 2 gapes on either side. So that is my basic drawstring bag. So those are the 2 sewing pieces that I have managed to complete this week. And for my third and final finished project for the week, I would like to present my butterfly blanket. It is done. So I've been sharing this with you for the past couple of podcasts as it was a work in progress, and now it is a completed project. So I'm going to hold it up for you to take a peek at. It's gotten huge. So I am sure you'll be able to see those beautiful butterflies. And as I said in previous episodes of the podcast, it is based on the butterfly prayer shawl pattern that is available on Ravelry. It is done in Caron Cakes in the buttercream colorway. I do a lot of Caron Cakes. You might have picked up on that. I just followed the tutorial that the Fibre Spider had put out on YouTube. So he took the basic pattern of the triangular shawl and tweaked it so that it would be a square. So watched that, figured out the pattern, and went with it. Now, as for the border, I was originally intending to do something fancy, and then thought, you know what, no. Between the striping of the yarn and the patterning of the butterflies, I didn't want to do something else that was going to complicate the blanket further from a visual standpoint. So I just did, I believe it was, what have I got here? 1, 2, 3 rounds of single crochet to finish it off. It does live on my couch. This one is for me. I love this blanket, and it is for me. It fits in very well with my decor downstairs. And I have entered it in a cal on Hannah's podcast, on her podcast, the Cozy Cottage Crochet podcast. So I have entered the cal, and it is the cal that I talked about last week, where it's creating things for yourself. Often we get caught up, I know I do, in commissions and gifts and things that we're making for other people. And while there's nothing wrong with that, one of the things I love most about our community is the generosity that we all seem to have in common. It is nice once in a while to make something for yourself. Now, I do have to say that since starting this podcast, the amount of crochet that I'm doing for myself has increased trifold. So apparently, if you want to do more selfish crochet, and I hate calling it that because it shouldn't be called that, if you want to get better at doing crochet for yourself, or crafting in general for yourself, start a podcast. You need the content, so you start doing things for yourself. But yes, so this is my third finished project for the week, or for the 2-week period, and I couldn't be more pleased. It is a fantastic pattern. The shawl pattern is beautiful, and the variation that this Fibre Spider did to create the blanket shape is amazing. So thank you very much. And yeah, so those are my finished projects, and I believe it's time to move on to projects on the go. Alrighty, moving into some current projects. So I have 2 things to share with you today. And the first one you have not seen before. It is living in a crochet bag. Crochet living in crochet. So I had received a whole bunch of small skeins of yarn. All I know about them is that they're 100% acrylic. I don't know what company they're from. It was gifted to me, but some really cute colors. So I thought, what can I do with these? I don't have a whole lot of yardage. So baby blanket was the thing that I came up with. And I am using from Attic 24, the hydrangea stripes pattern. Seen quite a bit of this on the interwebs as of late, on YouTube and whatnot. So I do have my little Zero Fox Given progress keeper on it. And here it is. So the hydrangea stripe blanket pattern, fairly easy pattern to follow. They are shells that are stacked one on top of the other. This is a free pattern on Ravelry, so feel free to go take a look. It is nice, it's a great pattern to be doing while watching YouTube videos. Again, not a whole lot of concentration needs to go into it. It's just the same row over and over and over again. So as you can see, all of these beautiful, beautiful colors. So white, pink, purple, blue, green. I can't give you color names because I don't know what they are. As I said, I don't even know what the yarn is. Now looking at the yardage I've probably got enough yardage to do double this, which means that it's not going to be big enough to be a blanket. So I was thinking that once I've got the middle, which is what this is going to become, of the blanket done, I might on either end, and as you can see, all of the ends to sew in end up on one side. But what I might end up doing on either end of the blanket is doing a additional stripe in a different type of a pattern, perhaps even going the other direction, and then seaming them together using a single crochet seam like you would do to join granny squares together to make the blanket the correct length, and then doing a border all the way around in just probably those basic single crochets that I like to border my blankets in. I think that'll work out quite nicely, and I would probably do it in a yarn that will work with the green. I do believe I have some green in this same sort of a weight. So the weight of this is I would call it fingerling, or fingerling. Maybe DK, maybe a thick fingering, or a thin DK. It's hard when you don't actually have any information on the yarn, but the colors are beautiful. I think it's going to be a beautiful spring, summer baby blanket, and it will end up in my Etsy shop because I don't have any babies to gift it to, so it will be up for somebody else to buy. Again, I'm often a process crocheter, not necessarily an end product crocheter. So I love learning new stitches and trying new patterns, but I don't always have a use for the final object, and that's where my Etsy shop originated from, is a chance to potentially get rid of some of these pieces. I also do a few craft shows closer to the holidays. So my second work in progress. Now I did show this to you last week, or last podcast, and it is, oh, I'm so sorry, the Blurred Lines sweater by Addie Day Designs. So Deanne Ramsey of Addie Day Designs. Gorgeous, gorgeous pattern. Super, super easy to read, to understand, to work up. I will admit, the sweater has been sitting on the timeout chair through no fault of the pattern. Please let me make that clear. I did mention when I was talking about the Mandella sweater vests that I can sometimes have gauge issues, and I knew I was having a gauge issue when I started this sweater. So when I did my gauge swear, because I did swatch, I am able to get gauge in stitch for the width of the gauge swatch, but I could not get the height of the stitches to match gauge. So I knew I was going to have to play around with it a little bit. I knew that going into it, and then I was having so much fun following the pattern that I wasn't measuring. My bad. This is completely on me. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of adjusting because I am not pulling this back. So this is what I have done so far. Let me show you the correct side of the project. So this is what I've got. And as you can see, if I put it up against myself, it has gotten, this striping should have started probably up here. So I am supposed to do an additional 3 or 4 rows of this, and then another 7 rows of solid dark blue before I separate from my sleeves. I'm not going to be able to do that, or the sleeves won't separate till they're at my elbows. So I am going to have to skip ahead to the sleeve separations right away, which means that my fade in isn't going to be quite as nice as it could be. Wah, wah, wah. But that's okay. I'm still loving the pattern. And like I said, the pattern is so much fun to do that I got a little carried away and forgot that I was going to have to be very on top of my measurements to make sure that it ended up being the right size. So the yarn that I'm using for this sweater project is Loops and Threads Wool-like. It is a fingering weight yarn. The project itself does call for that weight of yarn, but it was made using beautiful, beautiful hand-dyed yarns, and the cost of that was a little bit prohibitive for me, so I have gone with the Loops and Threads Wool-like. It is 100% acrylic, but I do enjoy working with it, and it's working up quite nicely. Just my bad for not having been on top of my measurements as I went, so I will definitely have to pay closer attention to the measurements as I continue with the Blurred Lines sweater. Alright, so those are my two current projects. I did mention that I do have a sewing project on the go, but that is way off in another room, and we'll be able to show you that when it's completed, so it'll be ready for the next podcast. Alright, so it looks like it's time to move on to what I have acquired over the past 2 weeks. And it's going to be a short segment because there's not a lot. So, new acquisitions. After last podcast, where I had just been to a fiber festival and had tons of things to share with you, this segment feels a little light this week, but that's okay. We don't always need to be acquiring new things. Sometimes it's worthwhile to work through the stash. Yeah, but it's so much fun to acquire new things. So let me share a couple of things with you that I have acquired. So first of all, I have received a new commission. In fact, it's 2 commissions. If you have followed me for a while, you may remember the teddy bear poncho that I had made up and shipped out. It was baby-sized. I have had a request for an adult-sized. Now, the pattern that I was following does not come in adult sizing. It was one of those free little patterns you can pull off the wall at Michael's. And I pulled it off the wall and I loved it. In fact, I've made 2 of them. But I have had a request for an adult-sized one, so I'm going to have to play around a little bit. If you've made baby sweaters and whatnot before, you'll know that the construction of them is slightly different than adult sizing, just because as our bodies grow, the proportions change. So I'm going to have to tweak things up a little bit to get the correct proportions, but I have gone with the pretty much the same yarn as I was using for the child-sized, for at least the first one. The second one may be done in a darker charcoal, but this is Karen Simply Soft, and it is in the colorway called Bone. So it is a light tan color. It is a 4-weight. I have worked with Karen Simply Soft before, and it's quite nice to work with. It is 100% acrylic, no wool content in it. But yeah, so stay tuned for upcoming progress on the 2 adult-sized teddy bear ponchos. So my second acquisition was an Etsy order. Surprise! I have expanded my Etsy ordering to include fabric. So not only am I now getting yarn and stitch markers and project bags from Etsy, I've now discovered that there's lots of great fabric out there from Etsy as well. So this fabric, let me see, I'm sure I wrote it down. Yes, is ordered from an Etsy shop. The Etsy shop is Fabric Design Treasures without the N. So there's no N on design, but I'm sure that's what it was supposed to be. So Fabric DESIG Treasures on Etsy. The shop is a Canadian shop based out of Montreal, Quebec. And yeah, it's a fairly new shop. So if you're ever interested in fabric acquisitions, go give it a look. I will add the spelling down in the show notes so that you can check them out. Great value to their shipping costs. Fantastic value to the shipping costs. So well worth checking out. So let me show you the 3 fabrics that I purchased and that came in the mail. So first of all, I have this one. So it is on a off-white background. Let me see if I can show you a good cross section of the pattern. There we are. So the pattern itself is called, the fabric is called Queen of Ween. It does have sort of a Halloween type theme to it, but also a Queen of Hearts. So it's sort of got that Alice in Wonderland, yet Halloween. It's also got Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. So a whole bunch of different, Queen of Ween. There's crows on it, which fits in well with the de Rabe aesthetic. Because de Rabe, if you're not unsure, actually means the crow in German. So quite liking that one. Then we have this one, and I hope the patterning shows up nicely for you. It is called, what did they call this one? Camp Some More Packed Campers. So it's an Ink and Arrow is, I guess, the company behind this fabric, and it's a whole bunch of line drawn campers, some tents in there as well, and some different scenes that you would see when you're out camping. So little fires, different trailers, different tents, some trees, little spots of color here and there. Quite like this one. And finally, on a blue background, we have a whole bunch of sheep. So we've got some white sheep, we have some black sheep, all on a light blue background. So as I said, those 3 fabrics were an Etsy order from, let me fit again, Fabric Design Treasures on Etsy. So for sure, check them out. Give them a little bit of Etsy love. And one other acquisition, but it's a little bit of a different acquisition for this week. So my aunt that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, she was a knitter. She also has done some crochet, but she was primarily a knitter. And in cleaning out her room at the hospice where she had been living the last of her days, I came across the last project she had been working on. Now, she hadn't worked on it for a while because her dementia had progressed to the point where she was no longer able to. But probably about a year ago, my niece, the one who got married last summer, was trying to get her to teach her how to knit. So this is the last project that my Auntie Ruth was working on before she passed. And it looks like it was a dishcloth. It is in 100% cotton. And she was using just some metal DPNs. Now I am not a knitter. I have tried. I have failed with the knitting. But even I can see that there's a few drop stitches in here and whatnot, which is, I suppose, fairly normal for someone who was faced with the challenges that Auntie Ruth was faced with. But I am so glad that I was able to take this project, and I might actually frame this as it is, in memory of my Auntie Ruth. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a different kind of acquisition, but something that I think is quite important to hold on to remember her by. So my third acquisition for the podcast. So it looks like we're nearing the end of the podcast. One more segment to go. And take a little stroll on over to my bookshelf. I've got a good one for you this time. Okay then, on to the final segment of today's podcast. And I have taken a trip to my bookshelf and come up with a book to share. So this book is not a new book. I believe it was released in 2016. It is called The Fireman, and it is by an author named Joe Hill. Joe Hill is actually Stephen King's son, and he does write in the same genre as his dad, so very much the horror genre. This is a bit of an epic story. It is dystopian in its flair, and it's amazing. Joe Hill, if we were to contrast the style of Joe Hill's writing to his dad, I find that Stephen King tends to be very character-driven. His characters are amazingly well constructed. You know his characters. You know everything about them. While with Joe Hill, he does do great character development, but his development of space, of not atmosphere, but of place, is amazing. He has created a very interesting world here where a plague of sorts has hit. The laymen call it dragon scale, where this virus attacks the human body, covers them in this beautiful tattoo-like black and silver tattooing, but eventually it causes them to spontaneously combust. Horrific. There's no cure. There's no way to stop it that the medical people are aware of. So it's really the fall of known civilization because of this disease. It is really, really well written. It's not a short book, as you can see. It does have some substance to it, but extremely well written. I really enjoyed this one. If you like sort of those epic books like The Stand by Stephen King or Swan Song by Robert McCameron, this book, I think, stands up with those other two that I just mentioned, which are two of my favorite books. All on its own. It is an equally good read to the other two, but it does have that commitment. There's a commitment involved with this book just because of its size. This cover will look a little different than the cover you can get with the book's actual release. This was an advanced reader's edition. Again, one of the perks of working in the book world means that I do get a hold of a lot of books before they're actually released to the public, and it allows us to be able to better speak to them once that book is released. But yes, do go check this out, The Fireman by Joe Hill. Now, his other books are amazing as well. You may be familiar with Horns, which was actually made into a movie as well, starring Daniel Radcliffe. But yeah, fantastic, fantastic book. Well worth checking out. So, that brings us to the end. Wanted to touch base with you quickly on the giveaway that I am hosting, the 100 subscribers giveaway. Haven't quite reached that 100 subscribers mark yet, so keep sharing this video so that we can get to that 100 subscribers and give away that wonderful, wonderful package of the project bag, the yarn, and the stitch marker. I'm looking forward to being able to host that giveaway. And on a little bit more of a note, I finally got my Ravelry podcast group up and running. I had tried and failed in the past to make it work, but it worked this time. So please come on over. There's only one thread open right now, and it's an introduction thread. It is Rabe Creations Podcast. Come on over to Ravelry. I would love for you to join the Ravelry group. It's exciting, moving in the right direction. If you are interested in finding me in other places, I am on Instagram as Nicole_Rabe Creations, and of course my Etsy shop, Rabe Creations, and I'm also on Facebook as Rabe Creations. So there's a bit of a trend going on there, the whole Rabe Creations thing. Yeah, so I'd love to have you join me on any of those social media platforms. I will be back in another 2 weeks with another fun and exciting episode where we will deal with more crochet, more sewing, and another book recommendation. So until then, thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.